The governor is accused of stealing his own car, simply because of the color of his skin. This incident will expose the painful reality of racism, ignite a public outcry, and forever change lives. The events that follow will shock even the most seasoned observers. But let's start from the very beginning. Brookston, early morning. A sleek white BMW 7 Series pulls into the parking lot of an upscale cafe. Behind the wheel is Ed Harper, the state governor, seeking a brief escape from his demanding routine. Dressed in jeans and a shirt, he appears like any regular man, though the confidence in his stride hints at his remarkable stature. Karen Whitaker, a local resident, notices the car and immediately becomes suspicious. Stepping out of her SUV with a designer coffee cup in hand, she briskly approaches Ed, judgment written all over her face. "Is this your car?" she demands sharply. Ed turns calmly. "Yes, it is," he replies. Karen frowns, clutching her phone tightly. "It doesn't look like it. Are you sure? This seems a bit too expensive for—" She trails off, but her expression says it all. "Yes, I'm sure," Ed answers evenly as he opens the trunk to retrieve his briefcase. Undeterred, Karen pulls out her phone and dials. "Police? I'm at the parking lot of the luxury cafe. There's a man here who's clearly trying to steal a car. Very suspicious behavior." Ed exhales, realizing the situation is escalating. A few cafe patrons, already filming the incident on their phones, approach. One attempts to intervene. "Hey, maybe you should stop. That's his car." Karen ignores the suggestion, her satisfaction growing as a police car pulls into the parking lot just minutes later. Lieutenant Rodriguez steps out of the car, his professional demeanor revealing nothing as he surveys the scene. He approaches Ed. "Sir, may I see your vehicle registration and identification?" he asks, polite but cautious. Ed, remaining composed, retrieves his driver's license and registration papers from his briefcase. "Of course, here you go." Rodriguez examines the documents, checks the VIN number, and hands them back to Ed. "Apologies for the inconvenience, sir. Everything checks out." Karen gasps in disbelief. "What do you mean everything checks out? That's impossible. You didn't check thoroughly enough." Rodriguez responds evenly. "Ma'am, I've verified everything. The car does, in fact, belong to Mr. Harper." At that moment, a bystander who had been quietly recording the interaction calls out, "Karen, that's Governor Harper. Are you serious right now?" Karen freezes, her face going pale. The crowd murmurs in disbelief. Ed, maintaining his composure, adds calmly, "Yes, ma'am, I'm the governor of this state. But thank you for your concern. Safety first." As Karen stands speechless, stunned by her mistake, the surrounding spectators continue recording. Phones capture her expression of embarrassment as Ed walks away toward the cafe, cool and unshaken. Despite being exposed, Karen refuses to back down. Her voice rises as she shouts at Officer Rodriguez. "This has to be a mistake. Check again. He must have stolen the car or used fake documents. People like him can't afford a BMW." Rodriguez, maintaining professional calm, responds, "Ma'am, everything has been verified. The documents are legitimate. Please, calm down." Meanwhile, more bystanders gather. Several are recording the incident on their phones, whispering among themselves about Karen's behavior. One of them remarks loudly, "How can someone be this arrogant? That's our governor!" Karen spins around, her face red with indignation. "Governor, this man is just pretending," she snaps, pulling out her phone again. She dials a news station and declares, "You won't believe what's happening here. The police are covering for a fraud. I need journalists here immediately." Ed, observing the escalating drama with cool composure, steps closer to Rodriguez and quietly says, "Thank you for doing your job. You don't need to waste any more time on this." Rodriguez nods and returns to his car, though he doesn't drive off, aware the situation could spiral out of control. Karen, undeterred, continues yelling at the growing crowd. "This isn't fair. Why are you all defending this man? He's clearly hiding something." At that moment, a young man steps out of the crowd. He's a waiter from the cafe who recognizes Ed. Loudly, he proclaims, "Don't you get it? This is Governor Harper. You're making a huge mistake. The crowd starts murmuring in agreement, and Karen freezes for a moment. But she quickly recovers, shouting, "You're all lying! Why should I believe you?" Her voice falters, however, lacking the confidence it held moments ago. Just then, the cafe manager steps outside. Approaching Ed, he warmly shakes his hand and says, "Good morning, Governor. Always a pleasure to see you. Your table is ready." Ignoring Karen completely, Ed smiles and nods. "Thank you. I think I've earned that coffee today." The crowd bursts into laughter, and many focus their cameras on Karen, capturing her reaction. Her face burns with shame, but instead of apologizing, she turns on her heel and storms off, muttering, "You'll regret this." Ed heads into the cafe, greeted by applause from the onlookers. Videos of the incident quickly spread across social media. The next day, the parking lot confrontation becomes a viral sensation. Videos of Karen's outbursts and Ed Harper's calm demeanor rack up millions of views, with headlines such as, "Karen accuses governor of stealing his own car." Social media erupts with discussions condemning Karen's bias and racism. Karen wakes up unaware of the storm brewing online. Her phone buzzes incessantly with messages. The first text is from a coworker. "Karen, have you seen the news? This is bad." Confused, Karen opens her laptop to find her furious face plastered across a popular blog. The headline reads, "Local woman tries to humiliate governor, accusing him of stealing his own car." "This is a mistake," Karen mutters as she scrolls through a flood of comments calling her the face of racist America. Flashbacks of the parking lot scene play in her mind, and for the first time, she realizes the cameras weren't just capturing her words. They recorded her behavior. Meanwhile, Ed Harper prepares for a public statement. His aides call him, "Sir, this is gaining national attention. It's an opportunity to address something bigger." Sitting at his desk, Ed nods. "We'll use this to highlight a much larger issue. This isn't just about me, it's about what so many people face daily." Later that day, Ed steps in front of the press. Speaking calmly but firmly, he says, "The parking lot incident is just one example of how bias can affect our lives. Yesterday, I was just a man accused without reason, solely based on my appearance. This has to stop." The press room erupts with chatter, and his statement dominates news channels. Karen, on the other hand, tries to defend herself on Facebook, posting, "It was a misunderstanding. I was only trying to protect our community from a potential threat." But the backlash is swift and unforgiving. "A misunderstanding? You proved racism is alive and well." Apologizing would have been easier than doubling down. Karen begins to understand the gravity of her actions as her reputation crumbles. Even her boss calls with bad news. "Karen, this is unacceptable. We're placing you on suspension while we review this situation." Sitting alone at home, Karen begins to realize that she has become the symbol of a much larger problem. But the weight of public scorn leaves her little room to escape responsibility. A week after the incident, Karen fully grasps the scale of her mistake. Her name and face have become synonymous with bias, and her actions the subject of ridicule and criticism. Then, another blow arrives. Her employer officially terminates her, citing a violation of corporate values. Reading the termination letter, she clutches her phone, realizing her old life is gone. Meanwhile, Ed Harper channels the public's attention toward positive change. He organizes a public forum on bias and systemic racism. Hundreds attend, including community leaders, journalists, and activists. Dressed simply, Ed steps onto the stage and begins. "A week ago, I found myself in a situation far too familiar to so many. But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about how bias and stereotypes continue to shape our world. Change starts with awareness, with education, and with action." The audience erupts in applause. Among them are Officer Rodriguez and the cafe manager, proud of their roles in standing by what was right. Watching the live stream from home, Karen hears Ed's words differently this time. Not as an accusation, but as a call to change. Gathering her courage, she decides to attend the next forum in person. When invited to speak, Karen nervously approaches the microphone and says, "I want to apologize to Governor Harper and to the entire community. I've realized that my actions were rooted in biases I didn't even understand. I was wrong, and I want to learn and do better." The room falls silent for a moment before sparse, genuine applause begins. From the front row, Ed stands and responds, "Admitting a mistake is the first step toward change. We're glad you're here, Karen. Welcome." These words mark a turning point. Karen begins volunteering with local education programs focused on combating bias. Her journey is far from easy, but she dedicates herself to proving through actions that people can change. The story ends with scenes from one of these programs. Ed Harper smiles as he speaks with attendees, while Karen helps organize materials for the event. Her face no longer carries anger or fear, but instead radiates determination. The screen fades to black with the words, "Every step toward a better world begins with one act of courage. The key is to start."